Greetings, everyone who has tuned in to the King Breaking the Silence webinar. We are joined by four incredible panelists. We have Aaron Gil Wilson, we have Caleb Kabede-Tale, we have Yancy Harrell, and we have Bill Wiley-Kellerman, who have been convened today to share how their respective work as peacemakers and organizers is interconnected and situated within a global project. We convene today to explore how our world is detrimentally shaped by a culture of violence that is rooted in racism, materialism, and militarism. We convene today because we know the normalization of this violence must stop. King urged us then, and it still rings true today, that we have a choice to move toward nonviolent coexistence or violent co-annihilation. Day in and day out, we lament how resources and energies have gone towards sustaining the latter for far too long. So it's time to shift towards liberation if we shall ever know peace. So I am going to start by introducing all of the panelists that we have here today. And I will start with Bill Wiley-Kellerman. Bill Wiley-Kellerman is a nonviolent community activist, author, teacher, and retired United Methodist pastor who's rooted in Detroit, Michigan. Over the last 5 decades, his work has grown from direct action in anti-war and anti-nuclear campaigns toward organizing more broadly with the Michigan Poor People's Campaign and the water struggles there to challenge systemic racism, poverty, the war economy, as well as ecological devastation and morality that we're facing or in our nation. So next, I will go to Yancy Harrell. Yancy is an anti-violence grassroots organizer here in Philadelphia. And alongside his wife, Dr. Movita Johnson Harrell, they formed the Charles Foundation, which centers on improving the lives of young people, bringing opportunities to Philly neighborhoods, and working to end gun violence in honor of their sons, Dante and Charles, whose lives were tragically cut short due to gun violence. Now, I'm going to introduce Aaron Gil Wilson. Aaron is the co-executive director of Urban Advocates, a Philly-based nonprofit founded by youth to advocate for youth to have equitable and quality education here. She's a freshman at Cheney, and she's studying criminal justice. And before all of these impressive roles she has now, she founded Mentally Eat, which stands for Evolve, Achieve, and Transform, with Aaron to spread awareness about mental health in our Black and African American communities. And last but certainly not least, we have Caleb Kabede-Tale, and he's a longtime organizer, despite being quite young, from the Cambridge, Boston metropolitan area, who moved to Philly to study computer science and Black studies at Swarthmore. His organizing areas of interest include advocating for police-free Black neighborhoods and technology and political education for Black communities. He's heavily involved with SJP and the Black Student Union on his campus. So I want to say welcome, everyone, and thank you all so much for being here on this panel. All right. So to honor the framework of our discussion, which is an annual reminder of what King stated in Beyond Vietnam, A Time to Break the Silence, I'll be asking my questions with direct quotes that come from that speech. So this first question is going to go towards Yancy and Aaron. So in thinking about a culture of violence, Dr. King said the following: As I have walked among the desperate, rejected, and angry young men of the ghettos of the North, I have told them that cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. I have tried to offer them my deepest compassion while maintaining my conviction that social change comes most meaningfully through nonviolent action. But they ask, and rightfully so, what about Vietnam? They ask if our own nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problems, to bring about the changes it wanted. In today's context, I want to ask, for those of us engaged in that community-centric work to reduce gun violence or end gun violence, how do you try to shift this culture from the ground up through grassroots community engagement? So maybe I'll popcorn first to Yancey, if that's all right.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yancey Harrell. I'm the founder and co-founder of the Charles Foundation. So Charles was murdered. People started calling me and my wife when somebody got shot. They said, you need to call Yancey Movida. We were showing up at hospitals. We was taking food to families and stuff like that. I'm also a permanent pantry here in Philadelphia. I'm also a civic association here in Philadelphia. And we also have a March for Our Lives chapter. So we also teaching kids how to become community activists. But one thing that I realized, the area that we are in Philadelphia is a food desert. Last year, SEPTA donated a city bus to us. So we have a city bus. And what we did, we transferred that bus into a mobile trauma center. So when the weather changes and it gets warm, we pull up the parks and we do therapy with children and families. The Charles Foundation also does a grief support. You know what I'm saying? Because when my son was first murdered, we went to a program, and the program that we went to kept us stuck. So we created our own program out of that. That's one of the reasons why the Charles Foundation came about. So one of the things that we did in 2013, there was a criminologist named David Kennedy out of John Jay College in New York. And he came up with a pilot, and the pilot was named Focus Deterrence. And what it did, we started in South Philadelphia. We picked a 40-block radius, and we identified 40 people that were liable to be killed or kill somebody. We took them into a judge's chambers with the DEA, the ATF, the top police brass, and social services. And the year that we did that, there was a 40% reduction in homicide. So there's some things that work, you know what I'm saying, that we can divert these kids from the violence, you know what I'm saying? But you have to give them opportunities, you know what I'm saying? You have to give them opportunities, jobs, food, education. How you gonna close schools and swimming pools when you got a city full of kids with nothing to do? When I was growing up as a kid, we had the PAL. You took up music in school. They don't have any of those things no more. When I was in second grade, I was on the chess team. They don't have those outlets anymore. So these kids don't have anything to do.
I appreciate you so much. And I'm glad you're here and you ended up hopping on Zoom. You're doing great. But I want to tag in because that last point that you made actually is a beautiful segue to Erin and the work that she's doing to advocate for returning resources back to the youth that are in our communities who have been negatively impacted by that neglect and that reduction in funding towards social supports. So Erin, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Once again, I'm Erin Gill Wilson. I'm a freshman here at the nation's very first HBCU, Cheney University, majoring in criminal justice to make a change legally within the court system and criminal justice system. But prior to being able to do that, I need to start my community first. Growing up in Philadelphia, a lot of my family members and even one of my teachers, people that I've grown up around, got incarcerated. And when I was younger, I never really understood it until I got older and realized that we're nothing but a product of our environment. If we grow up around financial struggles or what deems to be struggles, or if we grow up around a lack of resources, we're not getting the education that we need. We feel like, or we aren't being provided those career and job opportunities in the same way that our white counterparts are being provided. We feel like we have to resort into other options, especially options that are implemented in the communities that we reside in. So therefore, when people are being incarcerated just for trying to make a means of living or just trying to get their child something to eat or just provide some clothing on their back, they're put through that whole system. And then after leaving that system, it's like they have to navigate the world again. They have to remember how to live again. You aren't really provided with any job opportunities. And I also realized that mental health is a huge struggle within our society. Aside from mental health, social health as well. A lot of people believe that to seek mental health support or to reach out to someone when in mental struggles is something that's lame or something to do. But after experiencing my friend's grieving process to losing her mom to suicide, I realized that this was something much bigger than ourselves, especially at the ripe age of 13 years old. So I wanted to make mental health a thing where as though it's prioritized. you have these resources. Here are the resources that are available to you. You can use them. So I started my nonprofit organization as just a small mentorship program. It just started as a peer mentorship program. I got a little Zoom. My cousin bought me a Zoom account. And so I just had my friends come in. My friends bought their friends in a way that promotion and communication works. You tell a friend, they tell a friend, and those people join. And then we talked about the type of topics that were passionate to them.
Thank you so much, Erin. I feel like y'all have demonstrated the beauty of people power. And y'all both touched on something that connects me to the next question, which starts with this quote. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. Both of you touched on how our communities have been divested from, and how in order to pour back into our communities, you all have had to get creative with these resources as opposed to them being available to us in abundance. So I'm going to ask this question to Bill. How does our nation's continued investment in violence impact us all? What could exist if we invested in the soul of our nation instead?
Thanks, Michaela, and thanks to Yancy and Erin. I look forward to hearing from Caleb as well. The notion that the U.S. budget signals that we're approaching spiritual death suggests that a budget is actually a spiritual document as well. It names the priorities. It names or dehumanizes people, devalues people in need, and minimizes their worth at a national scale. I think it's important. This is not the only place Dr. King in the speech speaks of the nation as having a spiritual dimension. He also talks about the motto, actually, of SCLC being to save the soul of the nation, as you were suggesting there. How we need to tend our own souls in the face of these sort of budgetary assaults, I'll call them, on our communities. Part of tending the soul of the nation involves tending our own souls. We're talking about a military budget of, in the present year, I think it's $886 billion. When the Poor People's Campaign calculates militarization as a third of discretionary spending, they include law enforcement, mass incorporation, deportations, and detention as part of militarization. And that figure is well over $1 trillion. When you think what that could be doing in our neighborhoods for mental health, what it could be doing to give young people alternatives to conflict and gun violence, what it could be doing and to fund housing and all of that.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you for those words, as well as those numbers that really put what we're dealing with in perspective to this conversation. So, Caleb, I'm going to come over to you now. And I do believe this question is in a similar vein to where Bill started to take us. But back to referencing the speech, almost 6 decades ago, King linked the U.S. colonial warfare that's taking place overseas to the racist treatment of people of color right here in the United States. Undeniably, we know that police forces across the United States have been they've employed the Israeli Defense Force to train officers and share tools of surveillance to control low-income Black communities, Muslim, Middle Eastern, and North African communities, as well as Latinx communities. So some people may have a tendency to see what's happening globally as far away or disconnected to what's happening right here in our own neighborhoods. And I want to ask, how do you make the link for those who are just coming to these connections, or even in a space of denial about our shared responsibility to be a part of the solution?
I think that's a really good question. And I would say that this country has a really, really huge debt to pay. And I don't mean in reference to the World Bank or the IMF, but to all the Black people and all the people of color that it has effectively marginalized domestically and internationally, has capitalized off of us, and then has then criminalized us. And what we see is that through U.S. foreign policy, like it intentionally creates instability all across the world, all across the globe, forces people to seek refuge in other countries that are not their own, and then criminalizes them for seeking that refuge. Just as our communities are strictly segregated, strictly surveilled, and strictly policed, Palestinians in Palestine are constantly under 24/7 surveillance from the Israeli occupation forces. They live in a constant state of fear of being abducted into an Israeli prison for no reason, with no trial, in a constant state of subjugation to strip searches, home raids, even the occupation of their own homes for days. Um, and the U.S. has decided amidst this genocide, that the best way to aid Palestinians in Gaza is by dropping food aid on them from the sky in the morning, then dropping bombs on them in the afternoon and the evening. And what Palestine reminds me of a lot is, the constant surveillance Black neighborhoods are subjected to. It reminds me a lot of the constant police cruiser that strolls through every 30 minutes, every hour to patrol our neighborhoods. And ever since we were kids, we knew that we were under the watchful eye of the police. And we knew that there was always the police cruiser in the parking lot, or right next to the basketball court, or right next to the park that we're always playing at. And we knew that any action that we do can be deemed as criminalized, and that the police have the autonomy and every right to come and do as they please. I just want to connect it back to how Palestine really reminds me of the redlining that happens in our communities, the intentional withholding of resources to the Black communities, that you guys have already pointed out, and the fact that our neighborhoods are put in food deserts intentionally. The fact that Flint, Michigan still does not have access to clean water to this day, for very intentional reasons, that our schools are underfunded and deteriorating, for very intentional purposes. And this money, and I really truly believe that organizing and activism is a necessity for all of us, Black people and people of color, because if we don't do the work, then no one will do it. And we owe it to those who came before us to continue their legacy. And I want to end off by a quote from Malcolm X, who said that we are not outnumbered, but we are outorganized. And that perfectly encapsulates the current state of the Black community here, the Black diaspora, and people of color in general. And this is why organizing and activism, I believe, is a necessity, and why we're all of our struggles are interconnected.
Another thing that I heard, and as you were speaking, is we are facing a genocide, multiple genocides across this globe that our hands are directly tied into. There is no greater urgency than stating that at this time. So I appreciate you for bringing that language into this call and for resituating that. So I'm going to open up with actually another quote that connects to that in this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is a such thing as being too late. And that procrastination is still the thief of time. So I guess my question is for those of us that are organizers, specifically those of us who do nonprofit work or do it through university settings, these systems have been cultivated with so much red tape, so much blockage, so much let's pause and think, let's do all of this, which ultimately benefits the existing social order. So I just want to ask the question, how do we resist that tendency to not act swiftly and with urgency?
Everything that he talked about is going on in Kensington right now. They're trying to clean up Kensington, and instead of putting those people in treatment, they're locking them up. Another thing that Martin said was, he said that our lives are meaningless until we stand up and talk about the things that matter. You know, and people talked about mental illness, and mental illness is a big part of violence, you know, especially when it comes to incarceration, because 9 times out of 10, a person that's misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all. And as a family business, that's something that we do. We take care of people with chronic mental illness and intellectual disabilities.
So we're coming up on our time. A lot of gems have been dropped. A lot of calls to action have been made, and I appreciate all of y'all so much. So I'm just going to get into the last question, and we can just kind of snake around. King told us, right? Now let us begin. That was 6 decades ago. Now let us rededicate ourselves to the long and bitter but beautiful struggle for a new world. So I just want to give everybody some space to say a couple of words, or maybe a lot of words, depending on what's on your heart, about what's the world you hope to build. And how can we make sure this world is shared with our neighbors and something that can be inherited by those that come after us?
I'm speaking first. I have a few things, you guys. So first, I just want to start with love, y'all. I believe that in my community, or I feel in my community, there isn't a lot of love anymore or family feeling. When I was growing up, my grandpa block, I grew up in my grandpa's neighborhood area. It's the Southwest area in Philadelphia. And everybody just knew everybody. Like, if you were getting into something and you were playing down the street, down the block, and you knew you wasn't supposed to be doing something, you was doing it, you ain't have to worry about your mom getting on you because she was at work. You had 1,000 other moms on the block. Everybody wanted to support you and had your best interest at heart. It was a family thing. Like, everybody knew everybody. The older people, it was a lot of respect for them. It doesn't feel that way anymore. I remember even they used to bring lunches to the block and all of that, like the little lunches, just in case some people didn't have lunch over the summer. It was a family feeling.
Yeah. But listen, God willing, if I wake up tomorrow morning, I'll be 64 years old. You know, I want to say to the sister and the brother and everybody that's on this Zoom, don't stop. Don't stop. I mean, there has been times where I wanted to give up because it seemed like I wasn't making headway, but I can't stop. You know what I'm saying? I got to keep forging forward because, like you said, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? And I want to say to just keep doing what you're doing. We need people like you. You know what I'm saying? We need somebody to be out front. The only difference now than decades ago when Malcolm marched, back then there were people willing to die for what they believe in. We had gotten soft.
No, I feel everything y'all been saying. It's been saying with me really well. And I want to add on that I really imagine a world where we're moving away from these kind of Western and European values of individualism, of gatekeeping, of competition, and where we're in a world of where we turn towards our communities with care and we return towards each other with care and generosity and understanding, and where we're able to build each other up and where we have those resources. And also, I also imagine a world where we're not weighed down by the impossible task of making enough money to provide for our families, to the point where our whole lives are consisted of going to work and then going to sleep and repeating.
I was appreciating the way Aaron began, just what we need is love. And I'm hearing that in Yancy and Caleb as well. that's really what's underneath things. What Dr. King in various places called the beloved community. And I think in terms of the theme of the gathering here in Philadelphia of ICU, we are here, thinking of that community, including the ancestors, and that community, including those who are to come, and Earth itself and her creatures. That's the beloved community that I hear in your voices and that I yearn for in my own.